The email from my mother arrived Thursday morning. Subject line: Alex's graduation weekend final details. Rachel, we're so excited for Alex's medical school graduation on Saturday. We've reserved seats with the family: Dad, me, Aunt Caroline, Uncle Tom and Grandma. Unfortunately, the auditorium seating is limited and we could only get 6 tickets in our section. Since you've been having trouble with fatigue lately, we thought you might prefer to watch the live stream from the hotel room. That way you can rest and won't have to deal with the crowds. We'll celebrate together at dinner after. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking slightly, not from emotion but from the muscle tremors that had become constant over the past 8 months. My younger brother Alex was graduating from Cornerstone Medical School, fulfilling our parents' dream of having a doctor in the family. For 4 years, every family gathering had revolved around his studies, his clinical rotations, his upcoming match day. Mom kept a countdown on her refrigerator. Dad had already ordered business cards that said, "Father of Dr. Alexander Chin, MD." When I'd started experiencing symptoms 18 months ago, crushing fatigue, muscle weakness, difficulty swallowing, I'd initially brushed them off. I was a researcher at a biotech company working long hours. Stress and exhaustion seemed like reasonable explanations. But the symptoms worsened. I began falling frequently. My speech slurred. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't hold a coffee cup. After 6 months of tests, the diagnosis came: myasthenia gravis, an autoimmune neuromuscular disease where my immune system attacked the communication between my nerves and muscles. I tried to explain it at a family dinner. It's called myasthenia gravis. My immune system is attacking my neuromuscular junctions, causing progressive muscle weakness. I'm starting immunosuppressive treatment and... Alex had interrupted, barely looking up from his phone. Sounds psychosomatic. Classic conversion disorder presentation. You're stressed about work, your body's manifesting physical symptoms. Pretty common, actually. You should see a therapist. I've seen 6 neurologists. I have a confirmed diagnosis. The antibody tests. Antibody tests can be false positives, he'd said dismissively. Med school teaches you that first year. Most of these mysterious autoimmune conditions are just anxiety and attention-seeking behavior. My parents had nodded along. Dad patted my hand. Alex would know, honey. He's almost a doctor. Maybe you are just overdoing it at work. Have you tried yoga? After that, my health became Rachel's fatigue problem in family conversations. When I had to use a cane after a particularly bad flare, Alex told relatives I was being dramatic. When I missed his white coat ceremony because I was hospitalized for a myasthenic crisis, he'd sent a text: "Nice guilt trip." Real subtle. What they didn't know, what I'd stopped trying to explain after being repeatedly dismissed, was that my case had become medically significant. My neurologist, Dr. Patricia Morgan, was one of the leading researchers in autoimmune neuromuscular disorders. My disease presentation was unusual enough that she'd asked me to participate in a study on treatment-resistant myasthenia gravis. That study was being conducted in partnership with Cornerstone Medical School's neurology department. My case files, anonymized, were used in their 4th-year neurology curriculum as an example of complex autoimmune disease management. Dr. Morgan had mentioned it casually during an appointment. Your case is actually teaching medical students right now. You're contributing to future doctors' education, including, unknowingly, my brother's education. What they especially didn't know was that Dr. Morgan wasn't just my neurologist. She was the dean of Cornerstone Medical School. She'd been promoted to the administrative position 2 years ago but still maintained a clinical practice and research program. Alex had mentioned his dean in passing. Dr. Morgan is giving the commencement address. She's intense. Everyone's terrified of her. I'd said nothing. Why bother? They didn't listen anyway. I looked at Mom's email again. The livestream suggestion. Too tired for crowds. As if my progressive neuromuscular disease was just being a little sleepy. I replied simply, "I'll make my own arrangements. See you Saturday." Then I called Dr. Morgan's office. Her assistant answered. "Rachel, how are you feeling? Ready for Saturday?" Saturday. The graduation ceremony. Dr. Morgan asked me to reserve you a seat in the faculty section. She wants you there when she presents the research awards. Your case study is part of the Neurology Excellence Recognition. My breath caught. She's presenting my case at graduation? The anonymized version, yes. It's part of the neurology department's showcase, highlighting how student learning translates to real patient impact. Dr. Morgan thought you should see it. She was going to call you today, actually. We finalized the details. Faculty seating, accessible entrance, accommodation for my mobility aids. The things my family had decided were too complicated to bother with. Saturday morning, I took my medications, immunosuppressants, cholinesterase inhibitors, steroids, and dressed carefully in a navy dress that hid the tremors reasonably well. I brought my cane not because I always needed it, but because graduation would involve a lot of walking and I'd learned to be realistic about my limitations. I arrived at Cornerstone's auditorium early. The faculty entrance had ramp access and reserved parking. Dr. Morgan met me inside, her expression warm but professional. Rachel, thank you for coming. How are you managing? Today's a good day. Minimal ptosis, tremors controlled. Excellent. You're seated in the second row of the faculty section, next to the neurology department chair. During my address, I'll be discussing the importance of listening to patients and recognizing complex disease presentations. Your case, anonymized of course, will be referenced as an example of diagnostic persistence paying off. Does Alex know I'll be here? Her expression flickered. Your brother is graduating today. I wasn't aware you were related until I reviewed the ceremony seating requests and saw your family name. Are there complications I should be aware of? He doesn't believe my diagnosis is real. He thinks I'm faking for attention. My family wasn't able to get me a seat with them, so they suggested I watch from the hotel. Dr. Morgan's jaw tightened. I see. Well, you have a reserved seat in the faculty section, and you're welcome to it regardless of your family's arrangements. The auditorium filled quickly. I spotted my family in the midsection. Mom, Dad, Aunt Caroline, Uncle Tom, Grandma, all dressed up and beaming. They didn't look toward the faculty section. Why would they? The graduating students filed in wearing their white coats over formal attire. Alex was easy to spot, tall, confident, smiling. He'd made it. 4 years of medical school and now he'd be Dr. Alexander Chin. The ceremony began with the national anthem, followed by remarks from various administrators. Then Dr. Morgan approached the podium for the commencement address. Graduates, families, faculty, and honored guests. Today we celebrate 4 years of dedication, sacrifice, and learning. You've studied anatomy, pathology, pharmacology. You've learned to diagnose, to treat, to heal. But today I want to talk about the most important skill in medicine: listening. She clicked to her first slide, a quote from William Osler. Listen to your patient. He is telling you the diagnosis. In your careers, you will encounter patients whose conditions don't fit textbook presentations. Patients whose symptoms seem inconsistent or inexplicable. And you will be tempted, because you are human, to dismiss what you don't immediately understand. To label complexity as psychosomatic. To assume the patient is exaggerating or seeking attention. The auditorium was silent, attentive. I want to share a case that our neurology students studied this year. A 32-year-old woman presented with progressive muscle weakness, fatigue, difficulty swallowing, and intermittent ptosis. Initial symptoms were mild, easy to attribute to stress or lifestyle factors. But the patient was persistent. She knew something was wrong. My heart pounded. I saw Alex in the third row taking notes like this was just another lecture. It took 6 months and multiple specialists before the diagnosis was confirmed. Myasthenia gravis, an autoimmune neuromuscular disorder. The diagnostic delay occurred partly because her presentation was atypical, but also because several providers dismissed her concerns as anxiety or attention-seeking behavior. One provider, tragically a medical student during clinical rotation, explicitly told family members that the patient was faking symptoms for sympathy. Alex had stopped writing. His pen hovered over his notebook. This patient is here today. She's been generous enough to allow her case to be used for medical education, helping future physicians recognize the signs of autoimmune neuromuscular disease. Her participation in our research program has contributed to 3 published papers and has improved treatment protocols for patients nationwide. Dr. Morgan looked directly at the faculty section. Rachel Chin, would you please stand? Time seemed to stop. I stood carefully, gripping my cane for stability, feeling hundreds of eyes turn toward me. Rachel's persistence in seeking diagnosis, despite dismissal from multiple sources, likely saved her life. Early treatment intervention has prevented respiratory crisis and maintained her quality of life. She exemplifies why we must listen to patients, even when, especially when, their presentations challenge our assumptions. The auditorium erupted in applause. I sat down, my legs shaking from more than just the disease. I could see my family's section. Mom's face had gone white. Dad was staring at me with his mouth open. Aunt Caroline was whispering urgently to Uncle Tom. Grandma had her hand over her heart. And Alex had turned fully around in his seat, staring at the faculty section where I sat, his expression a mixture of horror and disbelief. Dr. Morgan continued. Which brings me to a difficult matter. During our final review of graduating students, a serious concern was brought to my attention. A member of this graduating class was observed telling multiple people that a family member was faking a serious autoimmune condition for attention. This occurred despite documented medical evidence of the condition. This same student dismissed the patient's symptoms as psychosomatic and discouraged family members from taking the condition seriously. The mood in the auditorium shifted. Students glanced at each other nervously. Medicine requires not just knowledge but empathy, humility, and respect for patient experience. A physician who dismisses documented illness, who accuses patients of fabrication without evidence, who prioritizes their own assumptions over medical reality, that physician is dangerous. That physician will harm people. She paused, her expression stern. The Hippocratic Oath includes the principle, first, do no harm. A student who has already demonstrated willingness to harm a patient through dismissal and medical gaslighting has not earned the right to take that oath. Not yet. Alex had gone very pale. Therefore, pending a formal review by the Medical School Ethics Committee, one student's diploma will be withheld from today's ceremony. That student will be required to complete additional training in medical ethics, patient advocacy, and the recognition of autoimmune disorders before being permitted to graduate. The student in question has been notified and will meet with me immediately following this ceremony. The silence was deafening. Then whispers erupted across the auditorium. Students turned to look at each other, trying to figure out who was being called out. But I knew. And from the way Alex had slumped in his seat, he knew too. Dr. Morgan concluded her address with the usual inspirational remarks about the nobility of medicine and the responsibility of physicians. The ceremony continued. Other awards, recognitions, the conferral of degrees. When Alex's name was called, there was a confused pause. Dr. Morgan announced simply, Alexander Chin, diploma pending ethics review. Alex walked across the stage to scattered, uncertain applause. He didn't receive the diploma folder. He shook Dr. Morgan's hand and walked off the opposite side, his face blank. After the ceremony, the auditorium erupted into chaotic conversation. My family pushed through the crowd toward the faculty section. Mom reached me first, her face streaked with tears. Rachel. Oh my God, Rachel. You're the patient. The case study. This whole time. Yes. And Alex told people you were faking. He said that. To classmates. To us. Her voice broke. His diploma is being withheld because of what he said about you. Dad looked stricken. We didn't know. We didn't understand how serious. Rachel, we thought you were just tired. We thought. You thought Alex was the expert because he was in medical school, I said quietly. You believed him when he said I was faking even though I had a confirmed diagnosis from 6 specialists. You suggested yoga instead of listening to me describe my treatment protocol. Aunt Caroline had tears streaming down her face. You were in the faculty section. You're part of the medical school research program. Rachel, why didn't you tell us? I tried. Constantly. But Alex was the one becoming a doctor, so Alex must be right. I was just your daughter with the fatigue problem. Alex appeared, accompanied by Dr. Morgan and another administrator. His face was ashen. He stopped several feet away, unable to meet my eyes. Dr. Morgan's expression was granite. Mr. Chin, your family is here. This seems like an appropriate time for you to offer the apology you mentioned in our preliminary discussion. Alex's voice was barely audible. Rachel, I'm sorry. I was wrong. About everything. Your diagnosis is real. Your symptoms are real. I accused you of faking a serious disease. I dismissed documented medical evidence. I prioritized my own ego over your health. And I convinced our family to do the same. You told people I was faking for sympathy, I said, my voice steady despite the tremors in my hands. You did that while studying to be a physician. While learning about the exact disease I have. What kind of doctor dismisses a patient's suffering because it's inconvenient? A bad one, Alex whispered. A dangerous one. Dr. Morgan is right. I don't deserve to graduate. Not yet. Dr. Morgan addressed my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Chin, your son will be required to complete 60 hours of ethics training, shadow our neurology department for 1 month, and write a formal research paper on patient dismissal and medical gaslighting before his diploma will be released. He will also be required to meet with Rachel and formally acknowledge his role in discouraging her family from supporting her treatment. Mom was sobbing openly. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Additionally, Dr. Morgan continued, I'm recommending that your entire family participate in educational sessions about chronic illness and family support systems. What happened to Rachel, being dismissed by her own family during a serious health crisis, is a failure that extends beyond your son. He turned to me. Rachel, I want to be clear. Your participation in our research program has been voluntary and valuable. What's happened today was not about punishing your brother, though his actions warranted consequences. It was about ensuring that future physicians understand the real-world impact of patient dismissal. You've taught these graduates a lesson they'll never forget. Over the following months, Alex completed his requirements. He shadowed Dr. Morgan in neurology clinic, observing patient consultations and complex case management. He wrote his ethics paper on how confirmation bias and diagnostic arrogance lead to patient harm. He attended my infusion appointments and witnessed firsthand what living with myasthenia gravis actually meant. 6 months after graduation we met for coffee. He looked different, humbler, older somehow. The diploma came yesterday, he said. They're holding a small ceremony next week for the 3 of us who had delayed graduations. Congratulations. I don't deserve congratulations. I almost became the kind of doctor who kills people through dismissal and arrogance. He looked at me directly for the first time. You were suffering, really suffering, and I called you a faker. I'm going into family medicine. I requested a primary care residency specifically because I want to work with patients whose conditions are complex and dismissed by other doctors. I want to be the physician who listens when everyone else gives up. That's a good goal. It doesn't fix what I did to you. Nothing fixes that. But maybe I can make sure other patients don't experience what you did. What I put you through. Our family slowly rebuilt trust, though it looked different than before. They attended my infusion appointments, learning the reality of autoimmune disease management. They read the research papers I'd contributed to. Mom joined a myasthenia gravis support group for family members. Dad started fundraising for autoimmune disease research. But the most significant change was simpler. They listened. When I said I was having a bad symptom day, they believed me. When I explained my treatment protocol, they asked questions instead of offering yoga suggestions. When I needed to use mobility aids, they made accommodations instead of suggesting I was being dramatic. Alex eventually got his diploma and started his residency. He sent me a photo of his white coat with his name embroidered above the pocket. Alexander Chin, MD. Below it he'd added a pin, a purple ribbon, the symbol for myasthenia gravis awareness. His caption read, "In honor of my first teacher who taught me that listening to patients isn't just good medicine, it's the only medicine that matters." He was learning. They all were. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I wasn't fighting my disease alone.